look at that. It's halfway through January. So, I know we chatted about this the other day, but I have to ask, is your New Year's resolution already feeling out of reach? Remember what I said? January 28th? Scrap them. They're already gone. Marco Pasqua is helping us out today with the power of setting smart goals and intentional plans that he says will set us up for success this year. Well, it's obvious. I need all of the help I can get.
This is Kelly and Company.
With me today, Nazreen Abdel-Majid. Welcome to the show. And no comments. She's here, ladies and gentlemen. All of you who thought I was giving her such a hard time yesterday about, oh yeah, the fake sick. Obviously, I was correct. Now, anyway,
Yes.
Niz, how are you this morning?
Logged in, and I immediately told you guys I am not sick this morning. Just like yesterday when I mentioned, oh, I might be getting sick. Kelly wouldn't let me hear the end of it, and I'm clear. I'm clear. Kels.
So are you a believer in that sleep that gets you? Like, I know when I'm sick, I feel horrible, and then if I fall asleep at some point, I'll wake up and it's almost like it's gone.
No, I don't get that feeling, but I do. It's the naps, right? It's the naps during the day that really, it's an iffy situation. Sometimes I feel like I wake up extra tired when I wake up. And then sometimes I feel like I did get enough sleep and I just really needed it. It felt nice. So,
excellent. Well, naps,
yeah.
I wake up with my heart pounding, and I've gotten a lot better, but I was like, hey, oh, what did I miss? It's just crazy.
But then you can't sleep throughout the night. So that's...
No, well, that's it. I'm not a big sleep person, never have been. And I've always been told, man, you got to get more. On the show yesterday, we had an interesting talk about crabs. Do they feel pain? Greg David, who was listening into our Do Crabs Feel Pain discussion, when we brought up Subway, he scooted over and took a look at the menu. What Greg was looking for is we had a chat about what actually makes up the seafood. What is the... Well, I said it's crab, what call it fake crab, but it's made from pollock. Now, this is what Greg says is in the seafood sub. The seafood sensation has sweet, tender chunks of seafood. Okay? Blended with creamy, light mayonnaise to make a delicious sub, served with your choice of vegetables and condiments on freshly baked bread. Okay, but...
What's in the seafood?
What is the seafood? Now, when I asked about it years ago, and I did the same at Subway, so maybe one did tell me pollock, maybe the other, I don't know. The staff often just don't know. They said, well, it's seafood. Yeah, but what kind of seafood? Oh, it's seafood. And to them, especially if they're a non-seafood person, I don't know, I don't care. It's things that come from the sea. So, but to define what it is, no, I don't know. So I'm not trying to slight you, Subway, at all. I certainly have no issue with what people
would like
refer to a fake crab. It's
Yeah.
just interesting to know what makes up that seafood. Thanks, Greg, for doing the research. That's really something else. Nazreen has something for us that you discovered. Nazreen, when you feel great later on, maybe you have a overdue book to go and return?
Oh my God. Yeah, I was always one of those people that if I would borrow a book, I would return it immediately, even days before it's due, because I'm very paranoid and I know it adds up over time. I'll forget about it. I'm like a goldfish. So when I remember something, I have to take it like immediately. I don't know about you, Kels, but I was definitely one of those people.
I actually... because, I remember wanting a card, like a library card, even though there was absolutely at the time not one accessible book in there for me to be able to utilize. But as a kid, I think I was about 8, 9 years old, I wanted a library card. So once, and I kept that forever, including when I got into the audiobooks that the library started to have. I'd go down, pick up a bag of books, bring them home and listen to the cassette tapes. Yes, I said it, cassette tapes. Well, I remember forgetting about a bag, just having it sitting there. Oh, I got to take that back. I got to take that back. 7 months, a year and a half. Well, the phone call came. Yeah, you owe us $320 some. What? What?
Oh
For
my
those audiobooks.
God.
What audio? And I couldn't remember and had to go look for the bag of them. And then I brought them back. But it was this thug-like person calling me up from a collection agency. Hey, you owe us $320. For what? For those books. So needless to say, I returned them. But you have an article about someone who made kind of the same discovery.
Yeah. At first, when I read this article, it stressed me out, but then it was a happy ending. But and there's an article I found. The New York Public Library has celebrated the return of a copy of Igor Stravinsky's 1936 autobiography 72 years after it was last checked out. Yes, you heard me, 72 years.
Whoa.
Billy Parrott, director of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, said he received a call a few days before Christmas from the library's Fifth Avenue branch. The situation turned out to be the return of a book that had been checked out April 4th, 1952, and had been due back 2 weeks later. Wow. So he said, we routinely get stuff returned all the time from the 80s or the 90s, but rarely stuff from the mid-century. The library shared photos of the long-lost book on Instagram and captioned it, quote, "Do you happen to have a library copy of Igor Stravinsky's 1936 autobiography that's 72 years overdue? Is the fear of late fees preventing you from returning it? Forget about it. The New York Public Library has been fine-free since 2021. So you can just breathe. It's okay. Yeah. You could return it."
Wow. And I guess even if you return it and it's obviously 72, it's going to be in rough shape, right? Like, you know, or maybe not. Maybe someone's got it as something they've thought, this book is going to be a collector's item someday. And they held on to it, passed away, and somebody else says, I don't know, this is a book that he had, have no idea necessarily that it would belong to the library because they haven't looked in the back to see anything. I think that's just amazing when those things come around. And I'd like to welcome Marco Pasqua, who's with us on the show today. And we're going to get to a chat with Marco shortly. But Marco, I'm an audiobooks person. There was that time where the library didn't have any. Have you ever been in this situation of that dilemma of, I don't want to pay the late fees, and we just compound it as humans do by just not returning it?
Well, yeah, I think you're right, Kelly. You tend to drag your feet a lot more, especially if you feel you're going to be reprimanded. And I think that in this instance, it is such a profound thing to have a book for, that length of time. Do your research if you're the family members and say, oh, okay, never mind. They've been fine free since 2021. Okay, we can bring this back, as Nazarene said, in peace, and know that we're not going to get a shakedown by the time we arrive in this New York library. So they did say forget about it. And so when Italians say that, I'm assuming Italian New Yorkers, they got to be serious about it, right?
I think that's amazing. Do most of our libraries charge still? I don't know if they do.
I think so. Well, it depends on where you live and what community you live in. There is, for my daughter, we get a lot of children's books from our local library. And if there's damage to those books, depending on the damage, then they may charge you for a whole new version of the book. But generally speaking, they're pretty relaxed when it comes to late fees these days. Yeah.
And I think that's what originally they were collecting money for those books that did get destroyed, for buying new books, and to take a few cents from each person if you were a few days late, a month late. No big deal. It was a reasonable fee that you were paying. Nazreen, awesome. Thanks for bringing that.
Thank you.
Folks, you can email us at kellyco@ami.ca. We always love to hear from you. Send it to us. The gang over in the marketing communications department passes it on to us. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas for the show, you can also give us a call at 1-866-509-4545. 1-866-509-4545. Leave us a message there. If we get an opportunity, maybe we can play it on the air, but otherwise we'll try to respond to what you may ask or just want to share with us. Always invite you to do so, and very much appreciated. Welcome back to Marco Pasqua, as I mentioned a moment ago, co-founder of Meaningful Access Consulting. Today, let's have a discussion on how to kick off the new year with intentional, achievable goals instead of setting vague resolutions that often end. I'm saying January 28th, but Marco's generous enough here to say February. Welcome back, as I mentioned. Now, we did a quick overview of SMART goals last week, which was crazy because they were on my radar a lot last week, even outside of the show. Lucia Belafonte brought them up in the context of meaningful parenting on the show. People can go back and check that out through our YouTube or through the podcast. So in your opinion, why do New Year's resolutions just simply not work? And how do SMART goals work better?
Well, thanks, Kelly. And this is my first show back in the new year, so I'm really pumped and refreshed to be back here. So thank you so much for having me back. But, I would say that the reason why resolutions really fizzle out for people is that they're so vague, Kelly, right? And Ezrain, people will just say, oh, you know what? I really want to get in shape this year. So that's what I'm going to do. My resolution is get in shape. And then my next question is, okay, what does that mean? What does get in shape look like for you, right? And so the acronym SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or time-bound. I actually like to replace relevant with realistic because we all have to be realistic in our goals, right? Like I know that, for example, when I set the goal of going to the gym for myself, I'm like, okay, I want to go twice a week. But I know that for myself, that if I just say twice a week, then I can go, oh, I didn't get there on Tuesday, I'll go on Thursday. Oh, well, today's really busy, so I'll go there on Friday. And before you know it, you only made it once, and then you keep giving yourself excuses. So this is exactly why you have to say, I'm going to go twice a week. I'm going to make sure that each time I'm writing down, the incremental changes that I'm making. Maybe I'm starting out with 30 pounds on one arm. The next week I'll try for 35. You really do have to make it. But for me, the biggest thing for SMART goals that has been a success is having an accountability partner, somebody that's actually there that says, hey, how is that going for you? It's somebody potentially that's not in your family circle or your friend circle, someone who is disconnected. Like for me, I have a personal trainer, and even though I could go with my wife to the gym, having this third party person that says listen, I'm waiting for Marco at this time specifically, it was a really good driver for me. So that's really the difference between those resolutions and those SMART goals. The SMART goals actually have actionable things that you're driving towards, and that you can check those things off and get a little bit of a dopamine hit every time you're achieving those goals.
I like that. I like the fact of substituting the word, because I know for a lot of us, it's not how many pounds did you lose, how much bulking up did you do, how many more miles can you run now than you could or you will in 8 months. That's what my target is. Those are nice. I'm not poo-pooing those, but what I'm saying is a lot of us, it's just a nicer way to look at, I'm going to make it twice a week. Hey, I went 3 times. Oh, this week I only got once. Do people have more trouble, Marco, in your assessment, whether it's before doing resolutions or even now with this, in the model that you're discussing? How do we feel about the accountability piece? A lot of us, I'm not going to eat less dessert. Hey, I see you're having a dessert. I thought you were cutting back on those.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kelly. I find that actually people should give themselves a little bit of slack. I think that if you put yourself too rigid with your goals and you don't give yourself an opportunity to have a moment of reprieve, knowing that we're all human beings. For example, I do intermittent fasting, but I tell myself that on Fridays, I extend my window of fasting a little bit later because it's Friday and I want to be able to relax and enjoy. And I check in with those things with my trainer. It's like, is that okay given the goals that I have? Well, absolutely, because the second that you tell yourself that you have to be so rigid, it's almost like you're living in your own internal prison. And then you basically completely fall off the map and say, you know what? Oh, this just didn't work. I'm going to try again next time. But that's why everyone predictably can say, well, if everyone has all these workout goals, for example, at the beginning of the year, by the beginning of February, you're going to actually have access to those machines again, because most people will have fallen off the map and not returned back to the gym, for example.
And I'm one of those people.
And that's okay. And that's totally okay. I think that
every year I have the same unrealistic goal of, let me work out 3 times a week. I'm just going to stick to this. And you're right. I should be more specific. And I use my partner for support, not a personal trainer. So we constantly, every day, we look at each other and we're like, are you feeling going to the gym? I don't know. Are you feeling like going to the gym? Maybe not. Okay, we'll go tomorrow.
Yeah, I love the idea of having stuff. I like the idea of having stuff where you can get at it, because sometimes it's simply just it's cold out. I don't think I want to go out. Or, we have all those reasons. But it sounds like, Marco, the third party that we might be talking about, the arbitrary person, I think with whatever you're doing, you kind of have to make that right selection of that person who wouldn't banter after you, isn't that person you're going to feel good, and it keeps it private enough, like with outside of our circle of people who, I thought you said, hey, how many times did you do this, or are you still smoking, are you, that kind of thing.
And then that makes you feel guilty. And then you live in that guilt, you circle around it, and then you feel like you're never going to get yourself out of that hole. So Nesreen, with you and your partner, like that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think what the goal should be is something more specific, like, okay, today we're working on arms. Do we feel like we could just do arms? And if that means that we don't physically leave our home, are we able to do some of those exercises in the home? And that way we're giving ourselves less of a hurdle to jump over, as opposed to saying, okay, we have to physically get out of here. For me, I know I want to physically leave my home, because for me, then I can leave the distractions that can easily say, well, you know what, maybe I'll just watch a few more YouTube clips and then I'll be out the door. Next thing you know, you're in the vortex, right? So I think that that's really what it comes down to, is give yourself the flexibility and the accountability also, but also give yourself a little bit of reprieve where it counts.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's jump into the framework, because I know we're sticking a lot with the one thing that we often do, whether it's a habit, something we don't do, or something we need to stop doing, as opposed to the achievement goals in this framework.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, one of the things that you can do to reward yourself is actually have a bit of a gratitude journal. Write down the things that you accomplished after you did them. It sounds silly. You can do it in any medium you want, but obviously, sometimes the best thing that you can do is have a checklist of breaking down those items into smaller tasks, right? So for me, I know that it's like going to the gym is the larger goal, but then it's like, okay, I want to do 25, sit-ups or 25 push-ups. The second that you have achieved that, literally check it off of your list. That feeling, that gamification of your life of being like, I did it, that's actually going to have you being hungry, Kelly and Nesreen, for more things. It's like when you play a video game, you know that you've achieved something, you want to go after the next thing. And so it does become addictive. What you're trying to actually do is change this from being a lofty sort of resolution to actually a habit in your life. And once it becomes a habit, it actually becomes almost automatic that you want to fall into those behaviors, and you find yourself looking forward to it as opposed to dreading it and going, maybe next time. But it does take a minute to get over that hump, and some of the ways you do that is by breaking it down into those smaller pieces.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. And I think that's where we need to pat ourselves on the back. That's where you stop and say, hey, I achieved. And like you said, the journal's the way to do it, because it's then done, gone, moving on next towards that addiction that you get by the achievements. Okay.
Well, and not only that, if you want to push yourself a little further, and this can be very vulnerable for people, take before and after photos. If it's something like working out, that can be very, very vulnerable. Nobody wants to have photos of their worst condition, but when you reflect back 6 months later and you look at the difference, that can just be something personal for yourself. It does something to you. It changes the physiology of your brain, right?
It certainly does. Really, really. Okay. Next, what else should we be doing?
Okay, so you've got the accountability partner, you've got the ability of writing down your goals or doing things like this. I think really what the next thing that you can do is obviously vocalize those things. So now you've went from writing it down into a gratitude journal to actually letting your social circle know that you're doing these things. And you don't have to be boastful, maybe on social media or be obnoxious and posting Instagram photos or things like this. But just letting people know that this is what you're working towards. You may not realize it, but you're actually expanding your accountability circle of people being like, well, actually, didn't you say, Kelly, that you were working on this? Didn't you say that you were going to be doing this? And hopefully they're going to do it in such a way where they're not razzing you to the point of making you feel guilty, to the point that you just want to give up again, right? Which I think is really, really important. The realistic component of it, I think, is something we should really circle in on. I said that R is relevant, but it can also be realistic, and realistic can be different things for different people. So it's like, okay, well, if your goal is to lose weight, and you say, well, by the end of the year, I want to lose 70 or 80 pounds. Well, for some people, that may not ever be realistic to lose 70 or 80 pounds. So maybe kind of focus in on a window of something that you feel is a little bit more achievable. Maybe it's 20 pounds to begin with for the first quarter of the year. See how well that goes, and then see what kind of adjustments you can make. So allow yourself the ability to make incremental changes as you're going, and know that you can make those changes. And it doesn't mean that you failed in your goal. It just means that you're adjusting and you're having it be a little bit more realistic or relevant to the overall picture.
Okay. So we had the chat regarding family and some of that with Lucia last week. Marco, how would you say people, and again, applying all this information, the 5 goals, to maybe your business aspirations or other things outside of, whether it's a hobby that you're involved in, how would you apply these in that sense? What would be your piece of advice for that?
Well, I'd say for when it comes to a business, I actually did use SMART goals when I drew up my first business plan. I also did something called a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So really understand the strengths that you're bringing into any given situation, where you might need a little bit of improvement, because you're gonna lean on these when you're developing your goals. Where are opportunities where you can actually expand? You know me, I'm all about utilizing my best energy. I talked about that on a previous show, right? So who can you utilize in your circle to help you to achieve those things? And then, of course, are there any threats to you achieving these goals? Are there naysayers? Do you have competitors within your business that you need to look out for? This is not necessarily a bad thing. If this is just something that you want to track and sort of catalog as you go. When I first developed my business plan, I thought that strictly keynote presentations were going to be the way to go. I never knew that with COVID, webinars would be presenting such a large component of my business over the last 4 years. And so that's where that adaptability comes in, Kelly, Nazreen. You have to really be able to adapt on the fly and say, like, well, I had this one set thing in mind for my business, but let your business speak to you. Is this still working? Is this the thing that's going to bring in the most revenue for you? But also, more than revenue, everyone, joy. What are you doing that's bringing you joy? Because at the end of the day, if you're just doing this to churn an income, it's not going to give you that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. You have to love what you do in life and in business, because that ultimately is what's going to strengthen any goal, whether it's a SMART goal or otherwise.
Marco, thank you. Appreciate the business and personal side of this discussion. We'll do this again very soon with you. Thanks, as usual, for joining us on the program. Some great conversation and wonderful advice.
Thanks again, you two, and have an amazing kickoff to 2025. We're in mid-January already, and I know by the next time I speak to you, you're going to have accomplished some pretty cool goals, I'm sure.
You bet.
Man,
we had
Marco.
the best advice. Appreciate it. The best advice for doing
awesome.
it. Marco Pasqua joining us on the program. We'll talk to Marco next month here on the show. Hopefully you'll be able to join us. And Nazreen, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Appreciate it. People can reach Nazreen on social media out there. You can do that anytime. She's always out there willing to banter with you. Remember to check out our podcast from your platform of choice and give us a rating and review. Coming up in a little bit here on AMI Audio, you can find it on YouTube. Parasport Nation, Alex Smyth joins us. He's the host of the program. Alex, welcome back. The best to you, sir.
And the best to you, Kelly. Hope you're doing well and on this Tuesday morning.
You have some amazing stuff on the show, which people can tune into shortly. Very excited for your today's guest, man.
Yeah, this is we have a really exciting week. This was something that we had kind of circled on our calendar. So for those who don't know, the next year's the 2026 Milano Cortina Paralympics will mark the 50th anniversary of the Paralympic Winter Games. So we wanted to reflect on kind of the history of not only the Paralympics, but Canada's involvement in the Paralympics. So we have on our show today Dr. David Legg. The name may sound familiar. He's the former president of the CPC. He's done a ton of work in the parasport movement, both domestically and internationally. He's, for lack of a better term, like one of the greatest parasport and Paralympic historians we have around. So me and Nathan got a chance to talk to him, find out like some of the key milestones of Canada's Paralympic history, parasport history, and the challenges of trying to not only uncover this history, but preserve it and keep it alive for future generations.
Oh,
and then
nice.
It's really fascinating. I already like told him halfway through the interview, it's like, I want you back. I have a million more questions, but we only have a half-hour show, so there's so much to unpack with him.
I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be amazing. In about 30 seconds, can you tell me about Friday?
Yeah, Friday, the NHL has put forth an initiative using ASL interpretation on some of the games recently. They did it with the Winter Classic. Well, we have Bryce Christensen, the man behind the ASL program in partnership with the NHL. He's talking a bit about that partnership and what it means for him to see ASL on bigger national platforms.
Absolutely fantastic. We need to hear more about this. We need to have more of it happening. Alex, good luck this week on the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, sounds good, Kelly.
Appreciate it. Man, so much to unpack and get into in conversations with all of that, ladies and gentlemen. You can join Power Sport Nation shortly on AMI Audio. It's part of Kelly and Company on Tuesdays and Fridays. Find it as a standalone podcast and available on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. Please interact, chat with us. On our next program, Leanne Barta is getting into the proper way to do laundry. Let's find out how to deal with stains and exactly what settings to use for the best results. Plus, we check in with Mike French from Robert Half Canada for the latest trends and discoveries regarding Canadian employment. We'll talk to you next on Kelly and Company. Fedora's off to you. Be good.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.